Good morning, everybody. Bad news from the UK in terms of what's happening with Ukraine, as the new Defence Secretary Grant Shapps has pledged to send British troops to Ukraine for the first time. Now, this is not to fight on the front lines, but it is to train Ukrainian troops in Ukraine to fight on the front line between Ukraine and the areas which are now occupied by Russia, where there are Russian speakers and Russian people. Now, before, obviously, under Johnson and Truss and Sunak, they have escalated and escalated and escalated. They've sent more weapons, stronger weapons, up to the point where Rishi Sunak has sent Storm Shadow weapons, missiles which can travel 300 miles and cause devastation, obviously, where they land. This is a new escalation. Again, another very dangerous and unnecessary escalation of putting Western troops overtly in Ukraine. Up to now, obviously, there have been Western troops in Ukraine. I mean, we know that, but they've at least pretended that they haven't been sending any NATO troops to Ukraine, even though they have been there. But the way they've done it is that they have troops that resign and then immediately are employed by private military companies that are going in and doing work as mercenaries. But obviously, I'm sure that the people in governments in NATO countries know what they're doing and know what's happening. They pretend they don't, but I mean, it's obviously they're there. This is the first time that a Western leader, a NATO leader, well, not a leader, but someone in a NATO government, a defense minister, has openly said that he wants to send troops to Ukraine itself. Now, we should be de-escalating, and we should have been de-escalating from the very beginning. This is a war, as I've said from the very start, that didn't need to even happen, because Ukraine has no strategic significance to me or any normal person living in the West whatsoever, and there's growing hostility to the war in the West. At the beginning, obviously, there was a massive propaganda coming through all mainstream media channels to promote this war as something that needed to happen, and they propagandized that Putin was evil and Zelensky was some kind of god victim. Well, he's not. He's just appointed a Satanist to be his ambassador for education, Marina Abramovich. His regime is infested with real Nazis. National Socialists, the Azov Battalion and so on, that fly National Socialist flags and wear their symbols on their uniform. He's just been to the Parliament of Canada, where he stood clapping along with Trudeau or Castro, whatever his father is, whoever his father is. No, that's another story. But Justin Trudeau, and all of the members of the Canadian Parliament, whether left or right, they're all part of the globalist uniparty that supports this, prolonging this conflict in Ukraine, all together stood up and gave a standing ovation to a real National Socialist who had fought in the Second World War on that side in Ukraine. And they did it mostly because they are Russophobic. They are against Russia, they're against Putin, and they say they're for Zelensky, who was there in his green jacket. And they all support giving more money and more weapons to the Zelensky regime. Now, we shouldn't be doing that. That's unequivocal. We should be de-escalating, because the real losers in this, sadly, are the Ukrainian people. They are the worst losers in all of this. I mean, these people do not give a flying monkey about the Ukrainian people, because so far, 300,000 of them to 500,000 of them, depending on which estimate you listen to, have died on the front lines. And it's not the people close to Zelensky. They're just there directing everybody else to go and die against the Russian advance. So they're sitting in Kiev, and Zelensky is swanning off around the world on private jets and being received and, feted and getting money and more money for more cars and more houses for himself and his people, his close group of people around him, while poor working Ukrainian men are being sent to die, and they're being press ganged into doing it. So you've seen probably the terrible videos which pop up regularly of recruiters going around to the towns and cities in Ukraine and press ganging ordinary young men who don't want to be killed in this war that they don't even believe in themselves, to go to the front lines, and they last 24 hours and they're killed, and hundreds of thousands of them. No question is hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have died. The only question is how many hundreds of thousands. And now Zelensky has put in a new edict, or put out a new edict, that women are to be recruited as well. So it's not just men that are being sent to die now, it's soon going to be women as well. So, this is a desperate, despotic act from a despotic tyrant. We need to de-escalate, not send British troops to train more Ukrainians to just go and die on the front line. And also the other thing that Grant Shapps, the British Defence Minister, said is that he wants to increase the capacity to make weapons within Ukraine. I mean, how utterly ridiculous this is. I mean, the moment they set up a weapons factory, Russia is just going to obliterate it with their hypersonic Kinzhal missiles, like they did at the very beginning of the conflict, where they fired some at a base in western Ukraine, very near the Polish border, where there were foreign volunteers had gathered in order to, I suppose they were idealistic, and they believed Liz Truss, who was Prime Minister at the time, and Joe Biden, that going to fight in Ukraine was a noble cause, and Liz Truss Liz Truss at the time, who was Prime Minister, said that she supported British people going to volunteer to fight in the Ukraine. She rode back on that a couple of weeks afterwards, but that was what she said live in a TV interview. Absolutely ridiculous. So, again, I'm the only political party leader, well, one of two actually, myself. George Galloway also, to be fair to him, has also been calling for an end to the war. So I'm one of two political party leaders in the UK who's been calling for de-escalation and to stop this war, to stop this madness from the very beginning. And I still am. And this new announcement from Grant Shapps, the fake Conservative Defence Minister, is just going to get us into a whole lot more trouble. I mean, you couldn't do more to try to escalate something towards a nuclear conflagration if you tried. And in a nuclear conflagration, nobody wins. Already tens of thousands of Russians have died, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have died, thousands of NATO troops have died, even though they are not supposed to be there, obviously they are. Tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of innocent people have been maybe killed or maimed or made homeless or had to flee somewhere else. And all the sanctions that NATO countries have put upon Russia have just backfired, because the idiocy of this is that there were good relations between Russia and European countries before. Under Trump, there was good relations between Russia and the USA. European countries could buy cheap Russian gas, which would keep their houses warm and industry going at a cheap price. It was a win-win situation. But that's now all been ruined and destroyed by the sanctions. There's bad relations between Russia and European countries and the United States, which shouldn't be. And the effect of that is that energy prices have gone through the roof for everybody in Western Europe, because they're not buying Russian gas when they could do. But obviously, that's been made harder by the terrorist attack on the Nord Stream pipelines between Russia and Germany that happened just about a year ago, the 26th of September 2022. And the finger points very much at the USA, the UK, and Norway for carrying out that terrorist attack. And so, it doesn't surprise me. It shames us as a nation to have a government that is escalating war and is potentially involved in terrorist attacks like that happened in the Baltic Sea with the Nord Stream pipelines a year ago. This isn't going to change with this fake Conservative government, or with Labour, or Lib Dems, or the Greens, or Reform UK. They all support escalating war. So please, if you want an end to this war, you've only got one option in the forthcoming general election, and that is the Heritage Party, because we have it in our manifesto that we should not get involved in third-party conflicts around the world. We should always, in the first instance, try to encourage negotiations and peace in those situations. We need a strong military, but to defend our own borders. And we're not defending our own borders when there's an invasion on our own southern border at the moment. And same as the United States, they have an invasion on their southern border, and Italy as well. So if we have a military, we should be defending our own land, not going and getting involved in a conflict which is completely unnecessary and has caused so much death and destruction and is harmful to our own national interests. It's an absolute no-brainer. Get out of the situation, de-escalate, encourage peace between Ukraine and Russia and the West as well, and let's get our country back on track, because being a permanent enemy of Russia is not the right future for this nation, the United Kingdom, NATO and the West in general, or the world as a whole. We should be friendly with Russia. That is the right future for the world. And we can get back there very easily. You just need the right people leading the country. You need to get rid of Biden in the USA. You need to get rid of Sunak and the party of the warmongers. Johnson, Truss and Sunak, and Starmer is the same. The uniparty of the warmongers, exactly, is what it is. Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, Green, Reform, UK. Need to get rid of them. So if you agree with me and you want de-escalation after the general election in the UK, we'll bring back any troops that Grant Shapps sends over to Ukraine. We'll stop funding the Zelensky regime with his Satanist ambassador and his National Socialist infested government. And we will make peace in the region and not war. Please join me in the Heritage Party, heritageparty.org. Please vote for us, stand for us in the general election. It can only happen with a groundswell of people who join in to stop the war.